All right, let's get straight to your corruption scorecard now. Here's Rofhiwa Madzena. Michael Marilia taking a bit of a break for today. Rofhiwa, a bit of an improvement, if I can say that. All right,
I hope he's not watching.
Let me not say that. Rofhiwa, we have our corruption scorecard, and we basically have the matrices on which we judge the progress in as far as getting answers and accountability. We've been talking about SAA, and basically my sense is that we've reached the point at which it has collapsed completely, and even if we do get an SAA, it won't be this one. It won't be this one that we've known since 1934 and in the years of democracy. So take me through what you've been looking at in as far as the various factors that you've been looking at.
That's right, Tulasa, and I was just saying for over a decade it's been taking a nosedive, and in 2020 it's finally had a crash landing, and we don't know if the pieces could ever be put back together again, can they? So we look at four elements here. Let's start with the first one, the charges, Tulasa. I'm going to be very hard on SAA here. I gave it a 0. No one has been criminally held accountable for SAA's demise. What we have seen, though, is that, which we'll get into a little bit later, is that we have seen some people being held accountable in the state capture inquiry. So it gets a 0 on the scorecard here because no one has been put in handcuffs.
And that's an important point, isn't it? Because one of the things that Cheryl Carolus was saying at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry was that at the point at which they came in as a board, there was a report, a forensic report, that could have formed the basis of charges. She says she went as far as to talk to Menzi Simelane, who was NDPP at the time, to say, how do we proceed with this? Let's lay charges. And nothing to this day. Nothing
ever happened. And that was scary because you'll hear in what's coming out of the inquiry right now, there were blatant illegal activities that were going on since 2009 at SAA. So let's move on then to the next element that we look at. Here I was a little bit lenient. A day in court, I gave it about a 3 out of 10. We did see Dudu Myeni in a hot court battle, the former chairperson here of SAA. Without her, here they wanted her to be declared a delinquent director, and this is because of her blatant interfering with the board, illegal activities, and really just holding back the turnaround strategy that SAA was meant to go through so that it could be turned around and really just stop the leasing, make it lean, and make it profitable once again here. So the score here is 1.2 for a day in court. She was declared a delinquent director and may no longer serve on any board as a director ever again, according to
Sure, but she's the only one who's had a day in court, right? I don't imagine that she was the only one who was possibly a candidate for being declared a delinquent director in all the years. I mean, if we sort of confine it to the years from Khaya Ngula to the point at which we don't have a CEO because we have business rescue practitioners. Some would say even go as far as Coleman Andrews' time, who had come to South Africa as the person who was going to turn Eskom around and ended up leaving with over 200 million rand, we are told.
Yeah. That's right. It's a bit of a catch-22 here to us because in the later years, so in the last 3 years or so, with the entrance of Vuyani Jahana, we did start to see a management or a manager style that were actually implementing a turnaround strategy. They had started, they were getting support from government, but you still had people that were interfering in the worst way possible. Before Malusi Gigaba was moved to a different portfolio, direct interference, really just doing what the Gupta's bidding. So it was really difficult for managers like Jahana to do their work when you had the shareholder really just preventing them from carrying out the mandate to turn it around.
And that's going to be a big talking point, the issue around the interference of management, of the shareholder. A lot has been made of the minister's approach, Minister Malusi Gigaba in particular, when he was in that portfolio, his approach and style of engaging with the board. Many, many people have spoken about the role of some of his advisors. I believe one of them was a man called Siyabonga Mahlangu, whose name featured quite a lot from a number of witnesses. But take me to the next factor that you took into account.
So this is the civil legal redress, the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. It's been one of my favorite to watch, and when it comes to SAA, there have been dozens of people that have appeared here to us. We've had people, non-executive directors, procurement officers, the head of SAA Technical, but most notable is one of the former CEOs here, Siza Mzimela, who was really scathing in her testimony against Malusi Gigamba, saying that he was blatantly committing crimes when he was the minister, directly involved. One of the things that she said, he was involved in the daily running of SAA, something a minister should not be doing apart from an oversight role, and just making sure that things like the turnaround plan or the money that's given to SAA has been allocated properly. And then also the role that PwC here, how they let it go, or how they kind of turned a blind eye to the financial irregularities that accumulated over the years and were allowed to get to a point where SAA basically financially collapsed. So here we gave it a score of 1.75 because of the people that have appeared and the honesty that's come out in terms of the true journey to collapse at SAA.
But we're not seeing any civil litigation, Rofhiwa, are we,
No.
in terms of trying to recover monies akin to what Eskom has been doing, for example?
That's right. So Eskom has been lucky in the sense that monies are slowly starting to be recovered. For SAA, Tulasa, worry that we won't see that. I don't think we're going to be seeing that redress in terms of the recovery of the billions that have been lost over the years. In fact, what we're seeing now with the business rescue process is that in a few weeks, Minister Tito Mboweni is going to be reallocating his budget and giving SAA that 10 billion rand that it needs to recreate the airline into a lean flying machine, if you will.
Well, let's see. Let's see how it goes. I mean, I don't know, because it's going to have to be a new airline, completely new airline, as you say, lean and hopefully a flying machine. Take me to the next factor that you consider.
Right, so the final one that we look at here, Tulas, is the political remedy. This one I struggled with quite a bit because he quietly resigned after years of destroying various portfolios. So you'll remember that he was reshuffled. He wasn't necessarily removed from his position as Minister of Public Enterprises. In fact, he was moved to an even more important portfolio, and that was National Treasury. So after all the mess was created at SAA, he was reshuffled to National Treasury. He ran that before he went back to Home Affairs, and then he left under a very, very dark cloud of controversy, and that's when he resigned as a Member of Parliament. But this one is a tough one because he really wasn't pushed out. There was no action taken by government or the ruling party to really hold him accountable for his actions.
Yeah, I'll go a bit further, Rofhiwa, and suggest that the accountability, in as much as he's accountable for his actions, but actually it's his party and his government, because if we go all the way back, to the years after democracy, there was a point where SAA was a profit-making airline. And the conversation around capitalizing it properly has always been there, to say after it was unbundled from Transnet, there wasn't any capital pumped in to make it viable, to make it successful. So I think that there should be that political accountability. They should jointly, and I know South Africans don't like this, but collective responsibility for some of the mess that we saw at SAA.
That's right, Tula. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens after the state capture inquiry in terms of the political remedy and also other people to be accountable here.
Right.
So on that note, let's give you a quick summary of what we've seen in terms of today's corruption scorecard. Really, really dismal to us today. 0 on charges, day in court 1.2, civil legal redress 1.75, and political remedy. And so the average that we're looking at here is a big fail to us. Let's have a look at that average that we're seeing today. It is 3.05. That's the final score. And that's really, really dismal, a dismal fail, if you will.
I can agree with that, because I believe that I stand to be corrected. But as far as I remember, this is the first state-owned entity that was there at the start of our democratic dispensation. Forget apartheid. We don't use apartheid as our baseline, right? There was no credibility there. So let's take it from
94.
We had an airline. It was a state-owned entity, and we ran it to the ground. It doesn't exist at the moment until a new one is established through the processes that we've been talking about. So I think the harsh score is well deserved.
Really harsh, really well deserved. And I think it's going to be very important to see what happens going forward with the airline, and the accountability factor is really, really important to us. So on that note, let's share with you the question, because we do want our viewers to have their say when it comes to the corruption scorecard, and really just have a say in the conversation. So the question here, tell us who or what is responsible for SAA's collapse? An inept government, incompetent managers, unions, evergreen contracts, and Coleman Andrews. I want to ask you for your opinion here. I really do.
It's going to be very interesting, because it's a nice variety of options, right? I mean, we talk about the unions, and some people have been critical of some of the captains and pilots associations at SAA and some of the packages that they've been earning there, even during the time when the airline was in trouble. But also, remember when workers went on strike, that was in November, I think, last year. They were criticized. Evergreen contracts and Coleman Andrews is always one of those conversations. When you talk about SAA, people will say, you guys are ignoring that there was a man who was brought here to come and turn around SAA and basically left over 200 million rand richer. And there have been accusations that basically governance was taken and thrown out the window.
Exactly.
I will say, though, that I did see that at that point, it was still a profitable company. Whether that had to do with Coleman Andrews or not, of course, it can be debated.
That's right. So let's see what happens. I think we're going to see some very interesting responses. I'm going to go cast my vote.
Absolutely. I'll see you a bit later. You can't vote. You're the IEC. I'll see you a bit later there. Rofhiwa Madzena will be checking in on the corruption scorecard and will report to us a bit later on here on the ENCA corruption scorecard. Still to come, I'll be chatting to Thabang Motsohi and Sabelo Skiti to talk about the issues at SAA as they have unfolded over the last decade or so.